Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Techgig webinar series, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is the key to enhance our skills and grow us as professionals. With this principle in mind, we have initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of various domains. The topic of today's session is how testing framework should be developed. Our guest speaker today is Mr. Saurabh Chandra, Associate Director at CA Technologies. BITS Ranchi and IIM Lucknow alumni, author of 2 bestsellers on automation published by McGraw-Hill, owner of 2 patents, author of 4 internationally renowned research papers, Mr. Saurabh Chandra is currently heading Automation Development and Testing Wing for CA, that is Computer Associates Clarity R&D Unit. He is a certified Scrum Master and a Six Sigma professional. He has worked with Oracle Corp and Birlasoft GE in his past. He is also chairing the Indian Testing Board Hyderabad chapter in the capacity of president. So without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker, Mr. Saurabh Chandra. Over to you, Mr. Chandra.
Thank you, Mohini. Hello, everyone. I can see a huge list of attendees out here. We are growing every second. 1281 registered, 419 live, and I'm sure it will grow as and when the time passes by. So maybe in the interest of time, let me just set the context that what is that we'll be talking about? We'll be talking about one of the most hottest topic in the industry going on currently, which is automation framework. What is it? What does it mean in today's world? What is that organizations are actually looking for? What is that an individual should start developing themselves in the area of automation framework? So all these questions I'll try to address in this 1-hour session. So let me just check a couple of things. If there are any questions, what I would suggest you guys is that you can ping me over the chat window, and if they are relevant to that particular slide, I'll try to address them then and there. Otherwise, of course, at the end of the presentation, I'll take up all those questions. Second, there's this raise your hand kind of a feature on your screen. So can you see it? Can somebody reply over the chat if they can see it? Okay, so I have not got any reply. Is it that in the chat window, Mohini, is it that in the chat window these guys can?
I'm adding you as an organizer, so then you can see that. I can see a lot of yes and replies coming from the attendees.
Oh, is it? Okay. Okay.
So I made you the organizer. Now now you can see that in your questions pane. Could you see that in your questions pane?
In my questions pane, yes, I can.
So most of the attendees can see that hand feature. Yeah.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, so let me ask you a few things quickly. Out of this complete audience list, how many of you are at a core engineering level, that is starting from an associate engineer till manager? Can you just raise your hands there? I can see the count. Can you see the count, Mohini? Because I can't. Moini, you there? Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
I can see the hands being raised. Need to go to your
Okay,
attendee
how many
list to see.
of the
You need to
hands
go
are
to
there?
the attendee list to see that the hands are raised. I cannot see the
Oh,
count of
okay, okay.
the hands being raised, but you can see the people who have raised their hands.
Perfect, perfect. So, okay, guys, people on the webinar, approximately 50% of the hands have been raised, and these guys represent the core engineering group. Excellent. And can you just disable that, whosoever have raised the hand, and how many of you are from the management area in the testing domain? Can you raise their hands? Okay. Disable the last one and only raise hands wherein you are from the management side of testing, from managers to directors. Okay. Perfect. So I can see some approximately 25% of the hands raised there. And can you guys disable it now? And can I ask that who all are the people who actually want to be entrepreneurs and they are in their current role have to take a stock of investment in the testing technology framework. So they are liable and responsible for monetary investments. Okay, approximately 10 hands raised here. Excellent. So my idea was to steer the talk in a way as how the audiences are so that everybody gets benefited out of it. So I've got the check of who all are involved in this webinar. So maybe without wasting a single minute, I'll start it off. Mohini, this is for you. I'm getting a message that some 501 user wanted to enter the webinar, but he or she is not being allowed to do that. Maybe you
Yeah,
may want
yeah,
to
Mr.
check that.
Chandra, I'll ensure that they join the webinar. You can please start with the webinar.
Perfect. So guys, as we all know, this automation framework, it is a very broad topic. So therefore, what I do is that I just take the most important essence out of it and I'll start going through this. Meanwhile, I'll ask certain questions in order to ensure that what exactly do you need? And therefore, I'll steer the talks in that way. So just be active and either in the chat or via raising your hand, you can do that. So let's go ahead to our next slide, which talks about as what is that we are going to cover in this. One is that what is the current definition of automation framework? That is, if you are an engineer and you are being interviewed by a company or you are implementing some framework in a company. So what is that is expected in today's world? Second is, what does framework look like? What does it mean? If a vice president of a company or the technology head of a company sees it, is it that what you are proposing is what that person actually wants? What is that the CTO or the vice president actually is looking at in terms of the automation framework? And this will be divided into three different frameworks. One is the internal test harnesses that the developers develop and then the testers consume. Second is the usage of the open source, and the third is usage of the licensed tools. After this, we'll be talking about that when any engineer, manager, or a vice president, they want to say that I want a framework, what are the basic guidelines that one should have in mind? And that objective can never change in spite of technology or the tool or the technicalities involved. What is that? And besides that, some best practices while you are pulling up the development pattern of the framework or usage pattern of the framework. And how can you segregate such issues or identify such issues during the journey of usage of automation framework by which you can continuously improve it? What are those things that one should look at? And after that, we'll jump on to Q&A, which is few questions you have posted on the webinar on the Techgig page, and few that you might be having after this talk. So this will be our agenda. And before I move down, I would just want to thank Techgig for making us all come together on this platform. And second, any of the expressions or opinion that are stated out here will be entirely owned by me and does not reflect any of the company or my previous employers. Okay, on that note, let me ask you.
Mr. Saurabh, could you be a bit loud? Could you be a bit loud, please? We're receiving comments from
how about now?
our
Is
listeners.
it better?
Yeah, it's better. And even I would request all the attendees to raise their speaker volume. It's good now.
It's good now, right? Okay. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, so let me ask you guys, just raise your hands that let us assume a case study out here that somebody wants to roll out an UI automation framework. And at a bigger picture, what are the things that you can think about? First, of course, the tool and the tool and maybe the usage of the tool, correct? How many of you say that this is it? Means if I get a control of the tool, my framework is done. Means I will develop some coding patterns and then we are all good to start using it. How many of you say that? Raise your hands. Okay. I can't see the hands there, Mohini. Is there any problem with it? Hello?
A few hands raised for this question. Okay. I can see 4 or 5 hands raised.
So let me just go through the flow rather than asking you in the interest of time and taking the account of the technical limitation out here. One, of course, identification of tool is very critical, but how do we identify tool if we are thinking about a testing framework? That depends on what kind of a technology that the application is using. For an example, let me tell you some real-time cases. If you are working with Oracle, an Oracle application has a different technology layer. Every tool cannot identify that technology layer. So therefore, you will have to check out that which technology layer, which tool actually maps up to at that present scenario. A few of the most famous ones would be QTP and maybe Selenium, but then how effective are those? So of course, identification of tool and what is that coding or the programming language that that tool uses. That certainly is one of the most critical things, but that is just if in today's view you have to take into account that is just 20 to 30% of the task of understanding framework architecture. What next? Let us ask a question to ourselves that once I have identified a tool and let us say that I have developed a very excellent coding standards around it, then where will I store my results? So let us say I store my results at specific place. Now, where will it get stored? Now, when it is getting stored, how it will be segregated? That is, I have identified a tool, I want to store my results, but then before storing results, where am I using it? Is it that it's having a multiple browser compatibility? Is it that my scripts can run on different browsers? If yes, then will the segregation be there in test management tool? So one integration that the tool that you identify and the code that you have developed should have an integration to support multiple browser supports. Second, it should also have the possibility and the feasibility to support multiple operating systems. Now, once you have this identified, then you would say that, okay, I have one test management tool, but then how will my automation tool or the test harness interact with that test management? because ideally they are two different softwares. So therefore, you will have to have APIs into place which actually will integrate with the third-party softwares. Now, is this enough as a framework? Looks good, but then in today's world, this is not enough. With so much of competition around, everybody wants their product to be released as early as possible. If the development time is 6 months, everybody wants that after development is over, maybe within a month of bug fixing, all testing should be done parallelly. So how can that be achieved? The only way to achieve is that we have a predictable code lines which runs daily, nightly, every single minute on every new build. And until and unless that is not achieved, no senior level management will approve that as a holistic framework. So what we need to do for that? We need to have certain APIs, as you can see it here on the screen. Let me highlight it. This is a spotlight I'm giving it to you, that this particular is a AND target which I'm proposing that one will have to develop in order to kick off the files wherever they are. And this is a software which is known as Team City Agent, which houses all your scripts, and an automatic trigger happens here. So therefore, if you'll see it into entirety now, you have a tool, you develop scripts, you make them compatible with multiple browsers, and the same script is compatible with multiple operating systems. It is stored somewhere on the server, and some AND targets trigger those scripts at specific time zone. This software runs it sequentially, parallelly, in whatever fashion you want to put it, and publishes the result back to the test management tool. So what it means is that an engineer enters the office and just triggers this AND target. All other things are being taken care automatically. This is the definition that organizations are looking for in today's world. Now, what does it mean for an engineer? Or an engineer, I remember about 10 years back, it was primarily this area that a testing engineer used to be comfortable with, that I design scripts and I'm done. But today, the automation group is not scripting group. It's infrastructure development group as well. Because if you want to integrate with various softwares, you need to have development background. And therefore, one takeaway here is that since you understand what global organizations demand, and especially let me name a few: Oracle, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, CA, EA Sports, all these leaders in their own space, they demand such expertise from an individual who are coming into the automation unit. So maybe I'll take a pause here just to understand that, do you understand what organizations are looking at when we say that I am good at automation framework design and development? You can just put yes or no out there, or maybe you can raise hand. Okay. Can you see hands getting raised, Mohini?
I can see them getting raised. We have a few raised hands now.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not being able to see the hands getting raised in my screen. I don't know why.
In the attendee list.
Okay. So good. So this is something which is pretty much. Sorry.
The hands being raised are shown there.
Are you saying something?
Yeah, I'm saying that you can see the hands being raised in the attendee list.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so now let's move ahead. So you understand what automation framework in today's world needs, and at the same point in time, this is a live example of one of the implementations in Fortune 500 company. Not one, it certainly exists now in at least 5 of the Fortune 500 companies which are around nearby in India. So now you understand that if you have to prepare yourself, how and where you need to go into now. And this is a real-time framework which I'm showcasing to you. Going to the next slide, now let's understand the different dimension. If you would observe in the last slide, which is pretty much visible here, we have used an open source. Open source has certain limitations, we'll talk about it later. But then, few of the companies which have their own proprietary languages and no outside tool or open source supports it, what do? So there, they actually go for internal test harnesses. One of the live examples as how this framework looks like. Let me give you a brief out here. Any organization which develops a product, especially which develops a product and is not into services, they want that their functionality and features should work always good. Now, how can they ensure that? Unfortunately, they can't take open source because open source do not even know what they are building in-house. So how will they support the technologies or objects of that particular product? Second, if they go for licensed tools, of course the same problem exists with licensed tools. And even if they buy it on the promise that the licensed vendor will support it, the question is how are they? So all these are the real-time problems that the core product technology companies face. Therefore, they go for in-house test harnesses. Now, what is the logic based on which it generally gets developed? The language primarily here is Perl, Python, and Java. Perl, Python primarily to check at the machine side, and Java to check at the application business layer side. So what is that they check? For any product company, one of the most critical testing aspect is how their functionality of the product working. If that is verified, then they feel a little bit more comfortable releasing their product. Now, think about it. You don't have a tool which can penetrate from UI layer. Then how will the functionality be checked? So here what they do is, or what they have started thinking to do is, that let me start checking the request and response of the data. That is, when on the UI, let us take the example of Google. When you enter anything in search and click search, the response goes to the server. At the server, it checks in the required table whether that data is there or not, associates itself with all the other primary keys, pulls up data, and then comes back at the client side, which is your screen, and reflects that these all are the things that are there with your search word. Likewise, if the harness is developed in a way that I will not go through the UI layer, but I will primarily trigger the event, the data flow event from my backend, which will go to the database, validate if that data exists, and then come back and let me know in the code that yes, that data flow is successful. Therefore, that is what is happening at the background beyond UI layer. And once that gets ascertained, then any product company owner feels that their product is working good to a level. So this is what generally the test harnesses does. Several times you would have encountered in your interviews that, do you know how to develop a test harness? What is test harness? What exactly can you develop using test harness? So these all are the critical things which actually you can answer, that what is the most important factor of developing a test harness, which is primarily to check the data flow across client and server without having UI interface into picture. This is one live test harness wherein you would see that this is TestNG wrapper which primarily enables the tester to pull out the log of the response and the request that goes to database. It checks in the database whether that particular data exists or not, and then the request comes back to the program, and that program checks whether this particular data which actually has come back was intended by the application server or not. So as you can read it here, everything which is happening at the back end. And this is that wrapper which actually is checking all this internally. This has been developed via Java, and the underlying mechanism for developing this is that there should be a function which should interact with the Oracle database, and it should be a global function so that everyone can use it. This function should check the tables, return back the data, and then says that yes, my request is asserted. It has come back from the database. Then it connects with the application server, checks whether that data was required by the application server or not, and if yes, commits it, and then goes back. So if this operation, if this is done, and then you open the application which is hosted on application server, try to go to that page where you have performed the action, the data which actually has got transacted here will start appearing in your application. So this shows that yes, your functionality is going good, but at the same point in time you are not impacted by the vulnerable GUIs. In the agile world and the Scrum world today, when development is happening every day, it is very critical that you do not touch the UI layer the most, primarily because it changes every time. And therefore, this is one of the most reliable areas as of now to check the functionality, which is via data layer. So therefore, this particular wrapper does this particular action. But as I said, we just don't need wrappers here. We need test management tools, we need automatic triggers, we need automatic runs, and therefore various APIs have got developed wherein the results get pushed in an XML file via TestNG and then get stored in QC via the API here. So as you can see, this is how these various interactions are happening, and this in totality can be termed as automation framework when you are talking to someone in a global organization. So this is an example of the in-house test harness. Okay, so maybe, you know what, I'll take a pause of 30 seconds. Raise your hands if you have been able to appreciate the difference between a test harness and open source, and how framework needs to be designed using both. Okay, can you guys type yes if you guys have been able to appreciate this? Okay. Okay. So I'll move ahead. Now, interesting part is that I just want to take you through certain documentations. Now, I'll let you know from where to find this, but the prime objective here is to check what are the objectives or the principles behind framework development. This is something which every engineer and manager and vice president struggles. to define in global organizations, because everyone comes with their own thought, and to put it down or to explain becomes very difficult. But now, since you have seen what is the definition of a framework, you'll be able to appreciate this more. Let us quickly go through this. What are the things that should be there in an automation framework, irrespective of technology and tool? One, reusability of file, rerunnability of files, parallel execution, that is, files should get picked at any random order parallelly sequentially, extensibility of files, which I said that if I'm plugging in a Java file, I want an API to be exposed via that file to get connected to the automatic runner or the TeamCity agent, which is my agent to trigger periodic runs, or QC, which is my test management tool. Clear segregation of all kinds of files, because you never know which file gets impacted where, and therefore you do not want every other script to get halted because of that. Global functions, local functions, data files. These are the reusability factors. SQL file. So as we all know that we just do not check the application or any of the application on any devices based on the session data layer. We also go to databases. Reusable XML files, .vbs files, wherein you will be putting or defining the parameters which you generally use 90% of the time around the year. Each test case should correspond to each script. Okay, so this is a very flaky area. Several organizations are trying to control this, but they are not. But here the important thing is that if you want to know, if the owner of the product wants to know that how good is my testing, or if an engineer wants to put an appraisal that I have done a fantastic testing, this parameter becomes very critical, and this you cannot plan post your testing. This has to be done prior to your testing. And of course the batch, the bundling of files to create a batch. Besides this, all open hooks so that it can get integrated to various other softwares around. This is page 199 where this is listed. In the interest of time, I will not go deeper, but start noting down this page number. I'll also let you know from where can you find this documentation. So all in all, these all are some basic parameters which any architect, any engineer who aspires to be an architect, any director or manager who is letting their team know that what you should think when you're designing a framework, any engineer who is proposing to their boss that what the framework that he or she is designing, all these factors should be thought through in their programming language. And since you have seen the slide wherein the framework was, you can now understand that why am I telling all this to be a factor. And of course this is beyond tools. This does not encompass just the tools ability. Okay. So let's go to the next area. I am sure if there are few people from Oracle and Amazon, they would be excited to see this. This is the real-time implementation. The whole segregation of files, scripts, it has been done in this structure. This is a live plug and play structure if you are using QTP and QC. So let me tell you, if anybody on the webinar uses QTP and QC, then placing their file in this particular pattern which says login to QC, go to test plan area, have these two folders. One is this asset. Assets are nothing but anything beyond your scripts. Scripts are something which correspond to a test case. So anything which does not correspond to a test case but is generic in nature is asset. And therefore, in that area, you come and put your test cases or test script. In assets, divide it into that if your product has multiple sub-products, then what functions are you keeping at product level? What functions are you keeping at sub-product level? And therefore put the library segregation in that particular fashion. Even when you are segregating libraries, you do not want to confuse your framework that where the SQL files are, where the scripts are, where the functions are, where the external data sheet are. And therefore where the DB connection lies, where the SQL traces lies. So this is a real-time implementation in QC, keeping into mind QTP QC integration. Likewise, similar structure can be followed for Selenium. Likewise, similar structure can be followed when you are going for internal test harnesses. If you are using mobile applications, then accordingly you can have a segregation at a product level for your mobile on-premises applications. Let us say somebody is testing an application on cloud. Whole framework remains the same, but the only thing is that in this structure, you saying that I'm having the scripts compatible with clouds as well, and therefore I store my functions, etc. for cloud, because there is a different entry point for cloud and there is a different execution philosophy on cloud, which involves several sessions, user IDs, password security that will go into the common library area. So you know, in-depth description, you can find it in this doc, which I'll let you know from where to procure. However, in short, when you are thinking about framework, this is your next step. After identification of tool, after identification of integration of tools, after identification of the programming language that the tool uses, this is how you align all the tools, softwares and files. And going to 205, scope and naming conventions. I'll not go in detail here because I assume that all of you are pretty much exposed to the technology and the development part. But of course, you have to be very cautious. If you can see this diagram, this segregates that this is my product, this is my product family, that is sub-product. I have my functions, recovery scenarios, various different kind of files. So therefore, you have to have a naming convention in a different format pertaining to each file. The reason, one of the most critical reasons which organizations fail to understand today, is that you develop a script that is fine, but when you have 10,000 of the scripts running, even if 10% script fails, which is 1,000 in number, then how quickly can you triage the failures? All these are very critical for that aspect. If you cannot triage your failures quickly, then your automation is not giving the right ROI to the company, and that's a sin. Therefore, multiple question gets raised. Was the strategy correct? Was the person at the top able enough to design the automation framework and architecture? Are the engineers good enough at the programming side? Are the engineers capable enough to triage all the failures around it? So all these questions can be avoided via these important segregations and keeping the files in right fashion. So with this, I have briefly touched upon that what are the objectives or definition that you should look when you are about to design automation frameworks. I'll take a pause here for 30 seconds. If you have anything, just let me know. Okay, are there any hands raised?
Saurabh, there are a lot of questions coming up. If you wish to take them now, you can answer them.
Okay, there's lots of questions coming up. Okay. How can I see those questions?
You can see them in your...
I have gone into questions tab. Okay.
tab, and
Let
I've
me
even
increase
assigned
the
some
size
questions
of
to
this
you in your
page.
chat pane.
Okay, I'm seeing the questions now. Perfect. So you know what? I will take up these questions now rather than going ahead further. Or maybe, okay, I'll take this question in next 5 more minutes. Let me just go through one important aspect which will be very critical for the audience out here to understand. That particular aspect is that let us say that with the right technology, with the right skill set, with the right engineers, with the right management, we have designed a fantastic framework. And especially in agile world, wherein you do not see UIs nowadays so frequently, tools are not so intuitive. However, you have gone through a mix of test harnesses and the tools. And now the question here is that, is it that the framework is done, there cannot be any continuous improvements? Primarily because if you will see, let me go back to the slide here. If you will see in this slide, it is not just tools. Here the tools part come. Let me highlight this. Tools part come. Here infrastructure comes. Here server side areas comes. Here networking and bandwidth possibility comes. So therefore, our hardware, bandwidth, and all working together actually brings a fantastic framework. But the problem is that it never works in a way one can think it to be in an ideal scenario, primarily because there's lots of variables involved. Now, what are those things that one should look out for in terms of continuous improvements? So I want to just quickly highlight that, and then I'll take the questions and answers. So I will go to this page, 194. 194, this page talks about that what are the things, that will help you identify the problems. Probable issue identification, segregation, and tracking mechanism. This is a this is a real case study. I have done it with Oracle, Amazon, CA, Microsoft, and a few more organizations that services industry side. And what we have found that few of the failures are functional issue, good enough, go to the product, get it checked. Few of the issues are intermittent functional issues, go to the log, get it checked. Few of the issues are seed data issues. All these are related to product. Object mismatch issue, it can be a possible bug, it can be a framework issue. However, the interesting part was the environment related issues, which is network bandwidth. So therefore, you should have in your coding development the intelligence to flush out in logs via the logger events after every bundle of code that how the output has come in that code. And this may help you segregate down the line that which areas are failing where. If there are blank pages, that means that it can be related with either machine optimization or server side optimization or the data request and response from database. If it is about the jobs processing at the application side, which takes huge time, then it can be related with costly SQLs, which is not tester's problem. But then it is good for a tester to tell the developer that where things may be possibly failing. And of course, that tool side or the test hardness side, if few of the things are not getting recognized intermittently or continuously. In the benefit of time or in the interest of time, I will not go deeper. But these are few important takeaways which have come out of the research from the real-time global organizations, and I wanted to share that quickly with you. Before jumping on to questions, let me just tell you where can you find this. So this is the book. You can find it on Amazon or Flipkart. I have told you the page number. The last half of the book comprises of automation framework. I hope that will be very useful. I wish it will be very useful for all of you. all these organizations which are listed here, I have done enough R&D to find out what they need, what they aspire for, and what is that is currently existing. It's a mix of all these things. Good thing is that this has got the bestseller in the World Book Fair. So this will be primarily for all age ranges, experience ranges, but I would say that if any engineer aspires to become architect, or if anyone aspires to handle the automation unit, global automation unit at a management level, then this book will be very useful for them. And this primarily, I would say, will be for the engineers in the experience range of 1 to 9 years who wants to know the nuances of automation. Means when I am automating, what all are the things that I should keep in mind during coding. So I would say that here, this would be pretty much useful for people who are in the experience range of 1 to 9 years working on hands at the automation side. And all the evidences that I talked about was from this book. So therefore the page number that you have written is from this book. And quickly now I'll jump on to the question and answers area. Okay. Okay, I just minimized it. Okay, let me start taking it one by one. QTP WebDriver, Santosh Sharma Jayanti. Could not get your question. Can you elaborate it? QTP WebDriver. QTP is fine. It uses VB.NET. WebDriver is for Selenium. You should use WebDriver if you are using Selenium. Don't go ahead with the legacy Selenium APIs. They'll be obsoleted very soon. Okay, operations of the open source. Sagar Samal. Sagar, operations of the open source means if you are identifying a tool, you have to do a thorough POC, how many objects getting recognized, what is the frequency of browser compatibility, how early the APIs are pushed for browser compatibility or operating system compatibility, where all are the open APIs for that open source so that you can integrate it into your infrastructure, which language it uses. If your organization is working on VB.NET, then you cannot afford to take a Java open source because you may not be having enough resources to work on it. If likewise, if you are trying to play back the scripts there, what is the kind of infrastructure hardware it demands? All these come into picture when you try to pick up an open source. How to handle test harness while automating a SOA application, as it involves a lot of backend stuff. The PPT that I showed for the test harness that primarily has been designed in real time in one of the Fortune 500 companies to handle SOA application itself. So since you saw the interaction of the DB, you have to be a code developer to develop that harness which interacts with database and your application server, and then talks between data layers in order to check the functionality flow. So in short, if you do not have a very in-depth expertise on development, you will not be able to design a test harness. That is why nowadays automation team is generally divided into two parts. One is automation development team, who are the developers. Second is automation scripting team, who all are the consumers. For an example, developers develop these test harnesses, and consumers, they just use these tools for effective scripting and testing. This was from Bhabubali Bokeh. Akash Jain, I think I know him, he is a good friend. When we talk about sidelining the UI aspect, do all the test management tools in market allow us to directly talk to the application functions calls to trigger a specific functionality check? When we talk about sidelining the UI aspect, do all the test management tools in the market allow us to directly talk to the application functions calls to trigger a specific functionality check? Answer is no. The biggest problem today in the Scrum world is that there are no such robust tools available which can interact with your application at data layer. That is where I'm sorry to say this, but I'll have to admit that QTP, Selenium, they are losing their charm slowly, and the test harnesses is gaining the charm. In fact, if there is somebody who is a budding entrepreneur, this is the area that they can start checking into, develop a tool which actually is very flexible at the data layer and become billionaire overnight. So answer is no UI tools at this point in time, goes to the data layer minus UI. Files means tests. Sir, what is the product family level? Okay, product family level, as I said, if all of you guys use banking applications, let us say in India you use ICICI and in US you use Wells Fargo, that is product family. That is the ICICI banking application, Wells Fargo banking application. But if you have to transfer money, then that can be a sub-product or sub-feature. So that becomes a sub-feature. But product family is the top of the parent application, which houses all sub-products or sub-features. Okay, PPT also will be available by tomorrow. That's okay. What is the best tool for automation? Santosh Sharma Jayanti. There is nothing known as best. It basically depends on your requirement. But if you ask me this question differently, that which tool should I learn in order to enhance my employability or expertise in the market, and at this point in time, it will be QTP, QC, and Selenium. QTP, Selenium are automation tools. QC is test management tool. Covertura and Emma. Covertura and Emma are both code coverage tools. Covertura is an open source. Emma is a licensed tool. And SOAP UI or REST protocols, these are for web services. So this is what you should learn if you want to be kind of having a better employability or more options in the employability. If we are not using QC or any test management tool in case, then where can we store results? Gurulinga Mutike. If you are not using this, there are lots many test management open source tools. You can take that and deploy it. You have several bug logging tools, Bugzilla, etc., which are open source. You can utilize that. And lastly, let us not forget Excel files. You know, I do not personally like them in terms of usability and the speed that or the consumption of hardware resources it brings on. But then, if you have the limitation and you cannot go for licensed or open source, and you want to be with the raw, the very basic format, go with Excels. Can we integrate the Selenium script in QC? Answer is yes. How cannot be explained on this session, primarily because of the complexity it possesses, but answer is yes. Which is HP supported tool and can easily integrate using QTP? Okay, so QTP, QC are easily integratable. Dhirender, this is for you. QTP, QC are easily integratable. Load Runner and QC are easily integratable. These are HP products, they get easily integratable. However, Selenium results or JMeter results, they can also be pushed to QC via the open test architecture. So if you are using QC, there are open APIs known as OTA. Via that you can integrate your tools and results. Zubair Palekar, should we have dependent test cases for scripts? Yes, I would strongly tell you to go for that. Maybe organization initially may not agree to this, but you should. This is test manager, test director responsibility how to align this. this can be catastrophic if it is not aligned in that fashion for the senior management. Because at the end of the day, Zubair, you have to answer how effective have been your testing. And it cannot be answered on a qualitative terms. It has to be put in a quantitative manner. So therefore, yes. Going further to your question, if not, then how should we go? So not is not a question. It is not an option here. Example, edit a user. We need to have a user in system before trying to edit it. How to handle such cases? Okay. So guys, this is a very good question from Zubair. I would want to tell you that several of the e-commerce applications or ERPs, there you have several such basic seed data which you want to push into the system. And when you are pushing into the system, they may or may not constitute to be part of test cases. Now, what should you do here? There are two aspects to it. Whenever there are critical builds, not regular builds, maybe you can say code freeze and deep code freeze. At that point in time, you can have certain scripts which will push data via UI. Those scripts can be mapped to the test cases. But in regular days, you should not try running those scripts because it's very time consuming and it delays your functional testing. For that, you should have the backend mechanism to push that. Either via SQL files populate the data or via LDT files populate the data into the system so that your functional testing starts immediately. So via .bat files, SQL files, LDT files, XML files, the data should be pushed at the backend. If data creation test fails, then what should I do? That is the question from Zubair. So yes, if data creation fails, that onus comes on tester, primarily because it is you who are putting the data to test. Now you have to identify whether it is a product bug because of which this data is not getting stored, or is it something that you are making a mistake there. Okay, Shekhar Bhosle, he is asking for that how can I develop the framework for cloud-based testing. Shekhar, both the frameworks which I have shown you, the Test Harness and Selenium, they are good enough to work on ERPs, e-commerce which are hosted on cloud. So the underlying philosophy remains the same. Only when you are designing common libraries, at that point in time you will have to have some common libraries for login, logout, and for performance hooks. So login means the login to a cloud-based system is different because you have to go through multiple servers, multiple securities. So your login file will change. Second, your application response time may not be that great. Therefore, you may have to have the right recovery scenarios and exception handling for such cases. But rest, everything remains the same. Cloud is nothing but conglomeration of various hardwares and softwares on a single platform, which anyways we were using on premises also. So nothing changes. Don't get terrified by the word cloud. Everything remains the same, only the accessibility part is something that you have to take care via your functions. What is XTH, JTH? Okay, so these are XML test harnesses, Java test harnesses. So it's a short form. In whatever language you want to build it, it is up to you. But idea is that how the test harness should be designed, and ideally it has to take care of the database, SQL files, the application server, and request and response for that. Okay, we use BPT functionality in our organization. Okay, so the question is not complete. Maybe I would request Deepak to put the question complete. How can I get hands-on practice at home, what I have learned today? Balraj, go and get the books that I have told you. It has several live cases with the code snippets that may help you understand or practice that. How much knowledge of coding is required for automation testing? Srimat Saha. So there is no direct answer for this, but now the world is changing. You cannot survive with manual testing expertise. You should start developing yourself in coding, even if you are a tester. And I would say that sky is the limit. So start acting upon as early as possible. If you want to know which all languages you should concentrate on at this point in time, I would recommend for Java and SQL to be at the topmost priorities. In case of test harness, how to access backend, which in different technology. Okay, Shivasta Iyengar. So Shivasan Iyengar. Sorry, Shivasan, you will have to sync up with your architecture team there. What is that they are using at backend? Is it that they are using Java? Then your test harness should be in Java. Is it that they are using XMLs? Then your test harness should be via Java XMLs, and that is the starting point, as you will know which test harness to build. Importance of HPQC, Ganji Girish. A lot, it's a test management tool. Think about it. If you do not have a purse and you have to store your money on daily basis, then you will be storing it at 10 different places. So the consolidation, the conglomeration, all becomes difficult, and it's high likely a possibility that you may start losing your money. So this HPQC acts like one-stop shop for storing and managing all your test inventories. Okay, using checkpoints in BPT framework creates my test run for longer duration. Deepak Kashyap, yes. Checkpoints, primarily what you need to do is that there would be a setting in the BPT that what time the test should wait till the time the checkpoint is not found. A, go and correct that. B, if these tests are interacting with some databases, etc., then check the bandwidth there. And C, if you are integrating these tests with any tools or files, check where the servers are. If a server in India is trying to interact with server in US, then these all are the problems which you face at performance side. Besides that, some lag when some checks are happening is fine. So you should not be bothered with that. You should tell management that that is how it is intended. Even a human, when they try to check something on any page, they take a pause for a couple of minutes there. And that is what the tool also does, because it is a simulation of human actions. Current discussion focus more on the HPQC. What if we do not use HPQC? Samir Gupta. No, it is not focused on HPQC. It was just an example because it is one of the most famous tools being used in the industry. So the idea was to take an example of such tools which enhances your employability, which lets you know that what actually is being used in the market in latest fashion. How to trigger the scripts which are in QC using Windows scheduler? Please let us know, Manohar. Manohar, there in via command prompts, via ant targets. If you have a Java guy in your organization, just ask them, can I create one ant target to kick off my runs via Windows schedulers? And he will tell you about that. It is possible, it is simple. It is just that you need to hook up with somebody who can create that .bat file for you to kick off runs via Windows scheduler. Where can I get the PDF? Can we get the PDF? Yes. This is not a PDF. This was the live book, and you will have to purchase it via Flipkart. I think so. Flipkart or any other, shopping e-commerce portal. I would be happy to get the answer for this question, so please provide your word. Which question, Srimant? Can you come up with your questions, please? 1 hour for this session is too less. Yes, 1 hour was too less. A challenge was there at my side, and that is why I set your expectation that I'll have to touch it briefly, and that is why I pulled up docs so that post this session you can refer to that. However, I will take it up with Mohini and we will see if we can come with some elaborate session someday. Can we use any other tool other than HPQC, say Jira or some other internal tool? Yes, Jira you can use. Jira is for bug tracking, not for test management, and QC is for test management. So if you do not want to use the QC bug logging feature, go for Jira. QC and Jira you can integrate via OTA. So yes, you can go for Jira or any other test management tool if you do not want to go with QC. Perfectly fine, Samir. Currently, which technology do you think is the most challenging to test automation? Arijit Paul. So anything which comprises with the workbench, Excelsius, JSON, which generates the graphs, reports. These all are the technologies which are kind of very difficult to test, and we should not invest too much of a time there because it hardly constitutes to 5% of the application. So that can be taken up as manual testing. Where can I download that PDF? There's no PDF, as I said. Go to Flipkart, get that. What is the name of the book, please? Okay. Let me show it to you quickly. Go to Flipkart, type the name here, Saurabh Chandra, and both the books will be at the top view. Automation testing, and second one is automating automation. Likewise, if there is somebody from outside India, they can go to Amazon and do the same. They'll get both the books at the top. We use RFT for running these scripts via automation. We face object identification issue. Is there any compatibility issue with respect to machines? No, Satya. Object identification issue is a known issue in UI world. So therefore, you have to use wildcarding techniques, you have to use recovery scenarios, you have to use exception handling, you have to use descriptive programming to reduce this. This is something which is a known issue, and my first book, which is Automation Testing, talks in depth how to reduce those. So you may want to refer to that. Which tool is most appropriate for UI testing? Krishna Kumar. Either QTP or Selenium I would recommend. Is it really necessary to have framework in every kind of automation? Yes. Framework is a discipline. It is a common language. If we would not have spoken English today, then do you think we would have been a part of the global economy progression that is happening? So until unless you do not have common language, you will be left aside, and then a day would come when the system would collapse. So that is where, in layman's term, framework comes into picture. Is it necessary to know the ANT script to go for automation framework? Balaji has asked. No. Can we import Java scripts into QTP? Ajay Varghese, yes. When you try to integrate tools, one of the area is their API integration or something. So that is where you can store any files, Ajay, into QTP, and that can be called via QTP. But if you are asking import Java scripts in terms of on its ID, on QTP ID, answer is no. You can trigger Java files using QTP. Chakravarti, your Your question is not complete. You may want to complete your question. Is QTP better or Selenium? QTP is more packaged, requires less programming skills. Selenium is not so packaged, requires more programming skills. So this I would leave it up to the investment that organization wants to make. QTP is costly, Selenium is free. But for a tester, if you are asking as an engineer, then I would recommend learn both. QTP, Selenium, both are very high in demand in market. Web services automation and framework. Bahubali, yes, they are very critical. As I said, SOAP UI or the REST protocols. Of course, there will be a different framework for that, but in the interest of time and the kind of audience at a broader level we had, I wanted to talk about the functional and code coverage framework patterns. What is the future of Selenium tool? Santosh Sharma, Bright. Learn it. How to maintain automation scripts apart from QC hard drives? No other way out. Source control area or hard drives? What all changes do we need to make? Okay, Chakravarti, your question is not complete. Abhishek Jain, what do we choose between Selenium or Ruby while testing web applications? If you are trying to go via UI, go for Selenium or QTP. If you are trying to go via backend stuff at the machine layer, go for Ruby. What is the best web driver apart from platform dependency? Anil Kumar, could not get this question. Anil, can you please elaborate? You have mentioned even if we make use of paid resource, still harnessing is done not effectively. Shakshi. Shakshi could not get your question. Please elaborate. One test case is equals to one script. Does that really work in real life scenarios wherein test cases have been already developed and test scripts are developed after that? Of course, this is a problem, as I said. So in case if you can't do much, you should not even wait for the destruction to be more. Arjun, start it from somewhere. Somewhere you will have to start. But yes, you are right. That problem exists, and that's a big problem in terms of gauging quality. So somewhere one has to start, Arjun. What it? Okay. So this is a kind of a harness which is open source, Abhishek. If your application uses it or you have expertise in organization, go for it. But this open source does not have active community, so you may want to be cautious about this. Object repository, Chakravarti, object repository, I'm not sure what you are talking about, but in case if you are talking about QTP object repository, go for automation testing book, the first book, which is this one, and a part in this one you will get all right details about handling object repository very effectively. Must read those chapters. In both the books, I have kept object repository as one of the most important topics because I personally believe that is heart of any scripts. Are there any readily available framework for Selenium? How to see the framework we can run Selenium or what is Maven? Okay, so no, there's no already available Selenium frameworks available. Maybe you'll have to design one of your own. Maven and Maven, these are two development frameworks, and whatever your organization has expertise into, you can ask them to do the knowledge transfer sampling. And is a little bit older Java related framework, and Maven is a little bit latest Java development framework. What tools are mainly used for Java based automation testing? It's primarily Selenium or Wattage, which is an open source web application test in Java. But Wattage is not supported by active community. Selenium is supported by active community venue. So you can plan to go for Selenium. Man, the questions are just increasing. So Moini, how much more time do we have?
I mean, we cannot take up all the questions in the time we have, so
Hello.
I guess, yeah,
Mohini, you there?
yeah. Can't you hear me? I'm saying that we cannot really take up all the
Yeah,
questions
I can
coming up.
now.
So I guess we can ask our users to post their questions on the webinar page, and you can answer them there.
Yes. So you know what, guys? Unfortunately, I was loving answering all your questions, but in the interest of time, maybe this is the Techgig webinar page. You post your questions here, and I will answer those. Maybe what I'll also do is that I would recommend all you guys who are asking questions on automation philosophy, framework, QTP and QC to go and pick up these books. Again, I would say this book should be read after this book, but then this one has automation framework. Okay, let me rephrase this. I would say that please go for reading both these books, primarily because all the questions that you are posting there, you have a detailed answer in that book along with examples and sample codes. And if in case you are very new to automation world, then you should go for this book first, but you should never miss this book. This is a progression. This is a little bit basic. So all the questions that you are asking me here on the questions panel, almost 90% are answered there in that book. So I would strongly recommend you guys to go and pick up that, and that was the reason I have walked you through the live chapters of the book, so that you can appreciate the discussion or the reading post this discussion. How many people are there in this seminar? So it max can be only 501. So we operated with 501. So between 300 to 501 is something that this webinar can handle. Otherwise, there were some 1,300 people who showed their interest to come to this webinar. But whosoever logged in first, maybe that they got the chance, or I don't know how it works, but this is how it is. So this was the final question and answer from my side, and I would thank all of you. I had a fantastic time interacting with you folks. Virender, Avinash, Savita, Anil, Zubair, Abhishek, Akash, Umesh, Ravi, all 500 people out there. Excellent. And this is Raghavendra from Hyderabad. I know this chap, pretty brilliant guy, works on Selenium. Excellent, guys. Thank you so much for such a lively session and such a healthy discussion. I wish you all the best in your career, and I would also want to thank Techgig, as this is one of the most usable platforms and the technology leveragements that Techgig has come up with. Excellent idea, Techgig, and thank you so much for supporting this. Thank you, everyone. You have a good day. Mohini, I'll give you a call on your mobile.
Thanks, Mr. Chandra, for your session on how testing framework should be developed. It was indeed a great session from you. I would also like to thank all our participants for their support in making this webinar a success. The recording of the webinar will be available on techgig.com by tomorrow. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.